Who let the janitor into the control bay? The voice echoed across the room, laced with sarcasm and just loud enough for others to hear. Madison Blake didn't flinch. She adjusted the strap on her worn canvas bag, her boots scuffing the polished floor as she moved toward the far terminal. Her badge faced inward. Her windbreaker had no logo. Her presence didn't register. Not one person in that launch facility knew the woman they mocked had once written the emergency protocols for half the systems they were now trusting with lives. If you believe silent expertise deserves respect, type "listen" below. The sun hadn't yet cleared the ridgeline when Madison Blake passed through Gate 4 of the Western Launch Complex. The corridor lights flickered above her as she moved, not hurried, but purposeful. In her left hand, a clipboard worn at the edges layered with system notes. In her right, a small portable voltage reader, the kind no one used anymore. Her boots were dusty from the gravel lot. Her badge, temporary and generic, hung backward from a nylon cord. A young contractor spotted her from across the operations floor and leaned in toward his colleague. "Maintenance crew's getting bolder," he smirked. "She's about to trip over $1 million in tech." They laughed. Quietly, but not quietly enough. Madison didn't break stride. At station T-17, she paused near a floor panel labeled Auxiliary Ignition Relay. A diagnostic monitor blinked softly on the wall. The reading was subtle, almost nothing, but not nothing. The thermal buffer delay was out of sync by less than half a second. To most, that wouldn't raise a flag. But to Madison, who once rewrote NASA's redundancy parameters after a failed wet launch simulation, it was enough. She crouched, slowly, knees creaking from age and years of field work. Slid the reader's probe into the service port. The numbers flickered to life. "You can't be down there." A voice called out from behind her, sharp, annoyed. Madison rose halfway and turned slightly. A man in a clean blue jumpsuit stood over her, holding a tablet like a shield. "You're not authorized for relay access," he said, eyebrows raised. "That's an engineering node, not a janitor's closet." She stood up fully. Said nothing. Behind him, others were starting to take notice. One of the launch techs, sipping from a branded thermos, watched the exchange with detached amusement. A group of communications personnel walking past barely glanced her way. "I'm going to need you to move," the man continued, louder this time, "and take that equipment with you. We can't have unauthorized personnel interfering with countdown critical systems." Madison disconnected the probe, wound the cable slowly, slipped the device into her bag. The man took a step forward as if to guide her away, but stopped. There was something in the way she looked past him. Calm, focused, not shaken. Still, she didn't argue. She didn't explain. She turned and walked toward the exit of the launch bay, passing under the massive mission timeline screen. T-minus 6 hours, 44 minutes. No one said thank you. No one asked her name. No one wondered why her walk was steady, even after being dismissed in front of half the floor. Years ago, her name had been printed on the cover of the Department of Defense's contingency protocols for orbital failures. Now she walked among them unseen, dismissed with a word, unseen by design. And still, she watched. The conference hall buzzed with polished shoes and polished egos. Media crews drifted around the hangar floor, prepping for interviews. VIPs in tailored suits took selfies in front of the rocket's silver hull. A promotional banner unfurled above the observation deck. Mission STX-91, a new era begins. Madison stood near the back of the hall, barely noticed, clutching a folded printout. The same anomaly she had measured earlier. It was more than thermal lag. It was propagating through the backup ignition logic. One misread signal in flight could trigger an automatic thrust override. It wouldn't crash the rocket, but it would send it off course. Silently, invisibly, until it was too late to turn back. She stepped forward, paper in hand. A senior systems engineer, clipboard underarm, was briefing a director from Mission Control when she approached. "Excuse me," Madison said quietly. They both looked at her, or rather through her. "I've been monitoring the ignition relay sync. There's a delay on the secondary buffer. If it propagates during the thermal spike at launch..." The engineer blinked. "I'm sorry, Who are you with? Facility support, the director said, eyeing her badge. Probably here for cleanup. Madison held out the page. The anomaly isn't random. The signal patterns. Ma'am, the engineer cut in, lifting a hand. This isn't the time or place for suggestions. Someone behind them chuckled. Another engineer leaned in, glanced at the paper, and said just loud enough, "Looks like she printed out Sudoku." Laughter rippled. Not cruel. Worse. Casual. Madison lowered the paper slightly. "I've written systems protocols for this exact class of launch. Just look at line 12. Before she could finish, a security officer approached from the side, eyes narrowed. "We've had a few guests wander out of bounds today," he said. "Do you have a reason to be in this sector, ma'am?" The paper in her hand fluttered with the sudden gust from a nearby exhaust vent. She clutched it tighter. "She was just leaving," the engineer added, smiling thinly. Madison looked at the officer, then at the launch director, then at the paper in her hand. Without another word, she folded it once, then again. Slipped it back into her jacket. She turned away, walking past tables stacked with champagne flutes and commemorative pins. A large monitor displayed the countdown. T-minus 5 hours, 51 minutes. She passed a group of younger interns rehearsing lines for a promo video. One of them held a cue card. Trust, precision, excellence. None of them noticed her. No one asked her why her hands trembled slightly. No one saw the calculation still inked along her left wrist, remnants of the test she never stopped running in her head. And somewhere in that silence, the echo of a second chance died before it could be heard. The door to the sub-level diagnostics bay creaked when Madison pulled it open. No one used this room anymore, not since the systems were migrated to cloud telemetry. Dust coated the consoles. A flickering wall panel displayed a dim schematic of the launch structure, still wired into the legacy circuit grid. It was quiet here. The kind of quiet she remembered. Madison sat down at the corner terminal, plugged in a small outdated drive from her bag, and waited. A loading bar crawled across the screen. Initiating Deep Link Interface. Clearance. Manual override. She bypassed it. Her fingers moved carefully over the keyboard, as if each keystroke had weight. She wasn't here to stop the launch. She wasn't even here to be heard. She just wanted the data to speak, if anyone bothered to listen. Her code wasn't loud. It didn't raise alerts or flash warnings. Instead, it isolated the faulty logic thread she'd traced from the relay node earlier. A small deviation that, in cascade, could compromise the stabilization sequence during stage separation. With a few lines, she inserted a silent gate, a soft lock. It wouldn't halt the launch, but it would prevent the anomaly from triggering its worst-case behavior. She could have signed the code. She didn't. She could have left a message. She didn't. Instead, she named the file after a bird she used to watch with her daughter on the old Florida coast, Redtail Failsafe. TMP. Then she logged out, unplugged the drive, and tucked it back into the side pocket of her canvas bag. As she stood, a wrench fell from the edge of the console and clanged against the floor. She paused, waited for someone to react. No one came. Outside the room, the noise of celebration resumed. Clinking glasses, camera flashes, the hum of forced confidence. Madison walked back to the main corridor slowly. On her way out, she stopped by the operations kiosk and placed a folded page beneath a loose binder marked Flight Day Procedures, Backup Only. She pressed it flat. No signature, no demand, just the numbers. Then she turned and walked away, unnoticed. A janitor passed her in the hallway, nodded once. She nodded back. No one else even saw her go. And somewhere, behind glass and concrete, the countdown ticked forward. Upstairs, the atmosphere had shifted. The governor's motorcade had arrived early. Flashbulbs fired like strobe lights across the hangar floor. Reporters clustered near the risers where a makeshift podium stood in front of the countdown display, now reading T-minus 4 hours, 12 minutes. In the mission control annex, engineers buzzed between terminals, final checklists, telemetry syncs, last-minute verifications. No one noticed the alert ping on the secondary console at Station 9B, not until a junior systems technician paused mid-keystroke. Hey, this script doesn't belong to our sequence, he muttered. His supervisor looked over. Where's it sourced from? Sub-level diagnostics, manual input, no logged clearance. The supervisor frowned. He scrolled through the lines, his eyes catching on a specific thread near the bottom. Gate trigger and override, lock, red tail failsafe, TMP. Pull the data window, he ordered. Now. Lines of logic unfurled across the screen. At first glance, everything appeared stable, until the supervisor dug deeper. There it was. A misrouted command hidden within the automated stage separation script. The timing offset, masked under a redundant flag. He leaned back slowly, color draining from his face. This would have bypassed fail-safe logic mid-flight, he whispered. We would have lost primary thrust vectoring. The technician blinked. Who wrote that fail-safe? The supervisor didn't answer. He stood up, grabbed his tablet, and walked straight into the mission lead's office without knocking. Inside, a half-dozen senior officials were preparing for a scheduled conference call with the Flight Safety Board. One of them looked up, annoyed. This better be good. It is, the supervisor said and placed the tablet on the table. Someone just saved us from losing STX-91 halfway to orbit. The room fell quiet. One of the senior flight officers leaned forward, scanning the code. I recognize that syntax, he murmured. That's Blake, Madison Blake. He looked at the others. She designed the counter-injection protocols for the Centaur test platform in 2004. She was the one who caught the memory leak in the Artemis II abort sequence, before it ever left the pad. Another officer spoke. I thought she retired. She did, after her daughter passed. The mission lead turned to the intercom. Find her, now. Downstairs, near the service corridor that led to the external bay, Madison was already halfway to the exit. She'd done what she came to do. But just before reaching the glass door, a voice came over the PA system. Not the generic launch voice. A direct override. Attention all floor staff. If anyone sees a woman in a blue windbreaker with a gray canvas bag, please direct her to Mission Control Annex A immediately. She paused. Behind her, two interns turned. One pointed toward her. Hey, is that... But Madison was already turning around. When she stepped into Annex A, the room fell silent. Gone was the noise, the confidence, the rehearsal energy. Now there was tension. And something else. Recognition. The mission lead stood not behind his console but in front of it, hands at his sides. Ms. Blake, he said, voice even. She nodded once. Didn't speak. You placed a failsafe into our ignition redundancy logic 12 minutes ago. Another nod. You caught something none of our systems did, and you didn't sign your name. Why? Her voice was soft. I didn't think it would matter. The supervisor who'd traced her script cleared his throat. It mattered. He stepped aside, motioning toward the large display. It now showed two simulation windows, one with the corrupted sequence, the other with her lock in place. If your override hadn't caught this, he said, STX-91 would have veered off course before stage separation. We would have lost telemetry, crew and cargo. One of the aerospace officers leaned in. Why didn't you report it directly? Madison looked down at the clipboard still in her hand. I tried, she said. No one listened. The room was still. Then someone in the back, a comms tech who hadn't said a word, slowly removed his headset. He stood up. So what do we do now? He asked. The mission lead looked at Madison, then at the team, then back to the big screen. We don't launch until she signs off. The press conference that had been planned for celebration was no longer about celebration. The folding chairs were still lined up. The podium still stood beneath the mission banner. The rocket still towered in the distance, poised under a slowly darkening sky. But the voices were hushed now. The champagne was quietly wheeled away. The crowd had been thinned, reorganized, and silenced. In the front row sat the governor, flanked by military officials and space agency delegates. Behind them, staff and support personnel who only hours ago had walked past a woman they didn't recognize, or refused to. Now they waited for her. From the edge of the room, Madison Blake stepped forward. She had changed nothing. Still wore the same windbreaker, same gray canvas bag. Her short silver-streaked hair was tucked behind one ear and the clipboard was still in her left hand. Someone tried to hand her a microphone. She didn't take it. Instead, she walked straight to the podium and set the clipboard down. Her fingers lingered on its edge. She looked out across the crowd, not to scan for faces, not to confront anyone, just to be seen, fully, silently, for the first time that day. "I was never invisible," she said finally, "just overlooked. No one moved. I was here this morning. I was here yesterday. I've been here for years, and every wire you ignore, every protocol you copy without reading." She took a breath. "You dismissed me because you thought you understood what competence looks like." Her words weren't angry. They weren't raised. They didn't need to be. "They call this mission a symbol of progress. But if I had said nothing, or if I had walked away after being ignored, we wouldn't be talking about progress. We'd be searching wreckage." A long pause followed. She didn't elaborate, didn't dramatize. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small plastic badge. One from over a decade ago, edges cracked, the photo faded. Madison Blake, Chief Systems Engineer, JPL NASA. She placed it beside the clipboard and stepped back from the microphone. Then she turned and walked away. No fanfare, no handshake line, no applause at first. But then, something began to shift. The governor stood. Slowly. Others followed. A wave of silence became a standing presence. Not ovation. Something deeper. Shame. Respect. And recognition. An hour later, the mission director held a second unscheduled briefing. He spoke clearly. "We are halting today's launch. Final clearance will not proceed until Ms. Blake personally reviews every contingency system." Behind him, a new placard had been mounted in the hallway leading to the control annex. It read, "Listen to the ones you overlook. They might be the last voice between success and disaster." The next morning, while most of the press had already moved on, Madison returned to the site through the side entrance. No cameras, no reporters. She wore a plain t-shirt this time, slacks and boots that had seen 20 years of launch pads. Her ID had been updated. The new one read, "Senior Systems Integrity Consultant, Direct Advisory to Launch Authority." She passed through security without a word. Everyone stepped aside. As she made her way to the diagnostics bay, she paused near the old annex wall. Someone had placed her crumpled printout there, framed under glass. The paper they had once dismissed as Sudoku. Now it was a permanent artifact. She didn't smile, but she stayed a second longer. Inside the bay, a young technician waited, nervous, curious, holding a tablet. "Ma'am, I was wondering, would you show me how you caught it?" Madison nodded once, unclipped her badge, and sat beside him. Outside, the STX-91 rocket stood silent but steady. The countdown screen had reset, not delayed out of failure, but out of newfound discipline. Not a moment had been wasted, and for the first time in a long time, no one in the facility doubted that the quietest voice might just be the one that saves them all. If you believe silent strength still matters in this world, subscribe now. And if you've ever been ignored for speaking truth, share this story and let others know. Your voice is not small. It's just ahead of its time.